Hello, in this video we're going to derive the derivative of the inverse tangent function by applying the inverse function theorem. That theorem says that if f and g are inverses, then f prime of x is equal to 1 over g prime of f of x. So here we have f of x is the inverse tangent of x, and g of x is equal to tangent of x. They're inverse functions, so the first thing that we'll do is to find g prime of x. And the derivative of tangent is secant squared. So we have secant squared of x. But we don't want g prime of x. We want g prime of f of x. So we substitute f of x for each of the x's. G prime of f of x is equal to secant squared of f of x. But we're given that f of x is the inverse tangent of x. So this becomes secant squared of the inverse tangent of x. Now we recall from trigonometry that inverse trig functions are angles, so I'm going to label this as angle theta. And then we can represent theta in a right triangle. So in the right triangle, I'm going to label one of the acute angles as theta. And we have theta is equal to the inverse tangent of x. That means that the tangent of theta is equal to x. But we can write x as the fraction x over 1. And then we recall that in a right triangle, the tangent of an angle is the opposite side over the adjacent side. So we'll label the opposite side x and the adjacent side as 1. Now using the Pythagorean theorem, we know that 1 squared plus x squared is the hypotenuse squared. That means that the hypotenuse is the square root of 1 plus x squared. Now we want the secant of theta and squared, so let's write down what is secant of theta. Of theta is hypotenuse over adjacent. It's the reciprocal of cosine. So we get the square root of 1 plus x squared divided by 1. And we actually want the square of secant. So when we square secant, we're going to undo the square root, and that's going to leave us with 1 plus x squared. So now that we know what g prime of f of x is, we can go ahead and evaluate the derivative of the inverse tangent function. F prime of x is the reciprocal of what we just came up with. So we get 1 over 1 plus x squared. In summary, the derivative of the inverse tangent function is equal to 1 over 1 plus x squared.